The MTSS resources that the SPED co-op has provided in the past year have been really helpful in three key areas. First, Laura and Jenna were really helpful in providing some research that really backs up the why about MTSS. Why is it so important for schools to have a strong process and kind of interventions at every tier, which we are able to then directly turnkey to our staff and teachers, which was really helpful. Another key piece of that research and the handbook that they developed was really helping us define interventions at every tier. So it gave us a common language to build from so that we can clearly say, here's what tier 1 instruction looks like for all students at DCPrep. And here's what we believe and how we would implement tier 2 and tier 3. And here's how all of that programming connects to the MTSS process, which then flows into the child find process. So it's really kind of a very comprehensive way to think about serving students, serving every student in our LEA, but serving them most effectively with the services that they require. And at the same time, not over-servicing students in a more restrictive environment than they need. But the most helpful thing was by far the sample MTSS handbook, which we were able to take and use as a resource to supplement with our existing MTSS resources, and we're going to be using in training this summer and fall with our teaching teams. MTSS can feel like a mystery, or it can feel really decentralized if you don't know where to start, or if you have a process and you're like, I think this is okay, but I don't really know. And so the sample handbook really gave us an opportunity to evaluate our existing systems and content and mindsets against what an exemplar MTSS system should entail. And then that helped us then be able to identify, here are the key areas we could improve in our MTSS supports. And here's where we're already pretty strong, and we can just like make some tweaks and keep it moving. So I would say that handbook, sample handbook, is comprehensive and clear in a way that I think can be really helpful for schools to take and run with. We are a fairly big LEA. We serve over 2,000 students across 6 schools. And we have a core group of stakeholders across our LEA who understand and can implement the MTSS processes that we have designed pretty effectively. What we wanted to be able to do was bring that understanding and bring more of that content knowledge to our teaching teams and to a broader set of stakeholders. So we kind of did an initial step back and thought about, okay, we aren't starting from ground zero with our MTSS processes. We have some key strengths. We have a lot of good academic intervention resources. We have some really good programming in our base model, but what we don't have are some SEL interventions, an easy and clear process to document MTSS supports. We don't have a way to build leader capacity to facilitate the processes at our schools. And it was kind of like all kind of clustered together in our central network team. So we thought that the co-op could offer some really great resources in digging into those specific gaps. And I was right, because one of the first things that we did as part of the MTSS work was set a short-term and a long-term goal, which then further allowed us to specify what we wanted to work on and kind of sequence the order in which we wanted to work on those gaps. The MTSS process can feel like a buzzword or like a mystery, especially if you don't really know where to start. And the resources that the co-op provided really helped to clarify and explain in clear language that like schools can pick up and use right away in how to start or refine your MTSS process. I also think that the co-op did an excellent job of tailoring support to the needs of our LEA. So they even provided resources to support, like we were really focused on building equity as a mindset and a reason for why the MTSS process is important at our schools. And so the co-op was able to provide a list of articles for us and some ideas for how to build mindset in our broader teaching team. And they also did some research and gave us some ideas for social emotional screeners and interventions, which was a key area of growth. So not only was the content really applicable to us as an LEA overall, but then the co-op really went the extra mile to help lean into what we really needed as an LEA, which ultimately is going to impact our success with the MTSS process in future years. I'm a longtime fan of the SPED co-op. DCPrep has been members since I joined DCPrep, which was in 2010. So we've been members for a really long time. I find the SPED co-op services to be really aligned to the needs of charter schools across the city, and the MTSS COP in particular seemed pretty relevant. I think particularly as most schools plan to return to in-person school, full-time in-person school, after a year of kind of hybrid or virtual learning. Schools who don't focus on clarifying and improving their MTSS process are at risk for kind of over-exacerbating the child find and referrals to special ed processes, which I think could really overburden special ed services at schools and not serve kids in the least restrictive environment. So I think for that reason, the MTSS resources feel especially appropriate and helpful for any school who is working on returning and kind of recovering from the year plus of the pandemic that we've experienced.